Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Let's continue then with our study of photosynthesis. So if you recall from a previous discussion, photosynthesis is divided into two parts, part 1 and part 2. The first part is light-dependent reactions. That is, it absolutely requires light. Light is a very integral part of this process. And we had previously summarized photosynthesis like this. The photosynthesis is a process that occurs in producers, autotrophs, many times. It's most of the time, as we get commonly accustomed to thinking of it, it occurs in plants. But plants are not the only autotrophs. But nevertheless, photosynthesis occurs in producers or autotrophs that use light energy to make energy-rich compounds. So that's a more formal definition, perhaps, if you like, for photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is a process where producers or autotrophs use light energy to make energy-rich compounds. And energy-rich compounds are ATP and NADPH for immediate use for plants. And the stored form of this energy is glucose. Glucose is an energy-rich compound. So, and if you also recall, the formula for photosynthesis is 6 of CO2 combining with 6 of water to give you 1 glucose molecule and oxygen molecule, 6 oxygen, like this. Okay. So this is the general equation for photosynthesis, and this is a more cartoon representation of light, carbon dioxide, water, giving carbohydrates is a final process, and oxygen. If you recall, oxygen is necessary for unlocking the energy in glucose in the process. That's reverse of photosynthesis, so to speak. Now, photosynthesis occurs in the chloroplast, as we know. This is the cartoon representation of chloroplast. Chloroplast is an organelle that has 2 membranes. It's a double membrane organelle. And of course, the outer membrane and the inner membrane. So chloroplast, like mitochondria and nucleus, has 2 membranes, an outside membrane and an inside membrane. And inside the chloroplast, it has these little disc-shaped organelles, disc-shaped structures called thylakoids. These are kind of cool names, I think, in fact. So thylakoids, they're like these penny-shaped things, okay? And they're kind of connected like this, okay? They're all a labyrinth of structure. So that's a thylakoid. And if you stack a whole bunch of pennies like this, a whole bunch of thylakoids, you get a granum, as in granary. You know, salt granary, they store salt for winter, for the roads. So that's like that, granum. So thylakoids are individual one of these disc-shaped thingies, and if you stack them all up, that gives a granum, and that's very important because that's where the light reactions are going to occur. Okay. Now, outside these granum, outside of here, is the stroma. Stroma is the space between these granums over here. That's the empty space over here. That's important because the first part of photosynthesis is going to occur on these thylakoid membranes on the surface. So that's where all the chlorophyll is. That's going to trap the light energy. The second part of photosynthesis is actually going to occur in the stroma. That's very important to know that the first part of photosynthesis occurs where the thylakoid membranes, and the second part of photosynthesis actually occurs not in the granum of thylakoid, but outside in the stroma. So the ATP that's produced by photosynthesis is going to go out from the thylakoids, and it's going to convert it into glucose in the stroma of the chloroplast. So this is the basic structure of the chloroplast that we need to appreciate. So, and then, as I have stated, the light reactions occur in the thylakoid. So this whole the big structure here is the egg-shaped structure is the chloroplast, and in the chloroplast are thylakoids, and this whole thing is a granum, and it is on the thylakoids that the first part of the light stage of the reaction occurs. Where the light strikes over here, it's captured by the chlorophyll, and the water molecules necessary to produce the 2 energy-rich compounds of interest for us, ATP and NADPH. And the byproduct of the first part of photosynthesis, part 1 of photosynthesis, is oxygen. And this energy can be used for plants, as you recall, for immediate use for whatever reactions it wants to do, or it can be stored in the stored form of energy, which is glucose, and the process that occurs by that's called the Calvin cycle. So these molecules give their energy over here, and it's stored in glucose. And of course, you need to make glucose. You need CO2 because there are 6 carbons in glucose, C6H12O6. So you take the CO2s to make glucose. Once these compounds give off their energy, they come back to renew themselves, so to speak, and the ADP plus phosphate and NADPH return back into over here. As I said, this reaction occurs in the thylakoid membranes, on the thylakoid membranes, and then after that, this process occurs outside the thylakoids in the stroma. So here's a different representation of the same thing. For emphasis, water molecules are input, oxygen is the output. Okay, and if you observe here, the oxygen is over here, the hydrogens go ATP and ADPH over here. See, so light reactions occur here. They're quite right, and this is like independent reactions where you take CO2 molecules and convert them into glucose. Now this is a basic formula for sugars in general. Glucose is just one of the many sugars. C6H12O6. O6. Now the basic formula is CHO because this is 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. So this is a basic formula for carbohydrates, right? If you have starch, which is just a whole bunch of glucose molecules attached to one after another after, the ratio of carbon to hydrogen to oxygen would be 1 to 2 to 1. So H2O is a basic formula for that represents sugars. Okay, and that's the Calvin cycle. So first today we're going to talk about light reactions. As I suggested, the light reactions occur on the thylakoid membranes. Embedded in the thylakoid membranes are a whole lot of proteins, a lot of proteins, and in between here also are the chlorophyll molecules. So the light strikes the chlorophyll molecules and energizes the electron, if you recall, and that electron goes to these proteins, and they use that energy to make ATP and NADPH. So the thylakoid membrane is studded with the key players, okay, and they are given names. They're called PS2 and PS1. Okay, Photosystem 2 and Photosystem 1. PS stands for Photosystem 2, Photosystem 1. Okay, so photosystem 1 and 2, okay, and there's other proteins, that's cytochromes, and then the ATP, the famous ATP synthase, a very cool protein. Okay, so the thylakoid membrane is studded with chlorophyll molecules, of course, that trap that light energy, plus a lot of protein complexes that use that high energized electron to do what the processes of photosynthesis. Okay, so this is where all the action is. Okay, if you were to magnify that area over here, you see when the light energy strikes in the tiny chlorophyll molecule over here, the electron is energized. So that electron, if it has enough energy, can leave the atom, in fact, and there is a ready electron acceptor. So in this area is a lot of fancy, beautiful molecules that when the electron is energized, the electron can leave this atom, and it's taken up by electron acceptor. Okay, and that electron becomes like hot potato. Okay, it's got a lot of energy. It's transferred from one place to another place to another place, and a lot of work is derived from that little electron. So what does chlorophyll do? The job of the chlorophyll is to trap light energy and give it to an accepting electron, and that accepting electron jumps around like hot potato, and that energy is used to create high energy compounds. So here's what happens. So the light comes over here, and the light energy strikes the electron, and that electron becomes energized. Now plants look green because that's the only wavelength of light that they don't absorb, and that light is reflected to our eyes. They absorb best and actually blue and red wavelength light, and green is reflected, so that's why plants look green. So here's electron being energized and going to higher level. If the electron has enough energy, it can just leave the atom. So then what happens when the photon strikes, okay, in these in this area, and then the electrons start jumping around in a high energy electron, and then eventually there's a primary electron acceptor. It comes to this primary electron acceptor, says, here, I'll take care of you, I know what to do exactly with you. So and the primary electron acceptor takes the electron. Now what happens then? Okay, so here's the big picture plan. Okay, so energized electron, this is what happens. You must understand this. The energized electrons, okay, the electron that has that photon energy now, the energized electron is used to generate a hydrogen ion gradient. Okay, that's very key, which means that across the thylakoid membrane, so this is the thylakoid membrane, okay, this electron energy is used to create a gradient. It's used to drive hydrogen ions on one side compared to the other side. Okay, and this hydrogen ion gradient is used to make ATP. Okay, so that's the key. If you understand that, you understand the light reactions. This electron is used to generate a gradient. It's used to generate a gradient, which means more hydrogen ions on one side than on the other side of the membrane. Okay, so why is electron such a good candidate for making a gradient? Well, electrons is negative, it attracts positively charged things, right? So this electron is used, this high energy electron, which it likes to move around, okay, is used to create this gradient, and this gradient is used to make ATP. How? By this protein which is embedded in here. Okay, this protein is the ATP synthase. So ATP synthase uses the gradient to make ATP, which is suggested over here. Okay, so this gradient is used to make ATP. And finally, this high energy electron, as it's doing this thing and to bring it hydrogen here, is accepted by NADPH. It's actually accepted by NADP to create NADPH. Okay, so electron goes here to make that. So it's kind of like this. Watch. So electron moves around the membrane and finally is accepted by NADPH to give you NADP plus to give you NADPH. So this is a high energy compound because it has that electron, and this gradient is used to create the energy. Okay, so this is the key picture. If you understand this, then you understand how light energy is trapped and by the electron. And in the thylakoid membrane, the electron kind of dances around, so to speak, goes up and down, and that causes that creates a hydrogen ion gradient, which is used to create ATP. And finally, the electron rests in it in NADPH form. So that is very key. Now watch again. So electron, as it travels across the membrane, it drives those hydrogen ions across the membrane, and that creates a gradient. And final acceptor of electron here is the NADP plus, which afterwards accepts the electron with the becomes the NADPH along with that. Now this is ATP synthase. Now this gradient is used to drive this pump, this protein that's in the membrane also, and that generates ATP. So that's the big picture. Now we're going to go into more details of the same picture. Now again, recall that this is occurring in the thylakoid membrane. So this picture is looking at the thylakoid membrane inside of a chloroplast. So now, so light strikes over here, okay, in the chlorophyll molecules, etc. And then there is a average Joe electron, so to speak, average electron. When it captures, when the photon hits the electron, that electron is no longer average. It's a high energy electron, and it escapes the atom and it goes over here, and these are system, photosystem. The term system means a complex of proteins. It's not just one protein, it's like a whole bunch of like big protein molecules, okay, big protein molecules that are able to do some pretty complex things. And this one is called Photosystem II because apparently it was discovered second, and Photosystem I, this was discovered first. So this one's called Photosystem I, and this one's called Photosystem II, and because that's the how it was discovered. So anyway, these are big protein complexes. So the light strikes the energon, and like a hot potato, the electron jumps around over here. Okay, and then what happens, like a hot potato, it goes from here, so the electron goes from there, and it's taken up by a different protein, and which takes it over here. While it's doing this, it's attracting this hydrogen ions, and the hydrogen ion is going to go over here, attracting hydrogen ion is going to go over here. So electron goes over here, and then the light strikes again. So in this one process, the light strikes in this system 2 times, both in Photosystem II and Photosystem I. That's why they're called light, okay? Photosystem II and Photosystem. So both of these systems are struck by light. So this energon becomes a high energy electron again. The same electron becomes a high energy electron, and then finally it's given to NADP. The precursor molecule for NADPH is NADP. So NADP plus an electron, okay, with the hydrogen ion will go on to make the NADPH. This is an energy-rich molecule. Where did this electron get the energy? From sunlight again, the second time around, okay? And once you make this NADPH can be used to for energy for use, or it will go to the Calvin cycle. Now, as the electron is traveling over here, the hydrogen ion gradient is being made, right? So in the end, right, if you look inside a thylakoid is like boatloads of hydrogen ions, right? It's like lots of hydrogen ions, right? Inside that thylakoid. So it's like a little sack full of hydrogen ions. So this hydrogen ion gradient is used, okay, now hydrogen, because you have created a gradient, naturally the hydrogen ion wants to move this way. They're like desperate to get out of here, right? Because there's so much of them, the gradient is so strong. Once they do that, they drive this pump. This pump is ATP synthase, a protein, and that pump generates ATP from the precursor molecules adenosine diphosphate and phosphate. So ADP plus phosphate, adenosine diphosphate plus the phosphate will give you adenosine triphosphate as the gradient hydrogen ions move across this protein. So okay, so this is the general overview of this. Now I'm going to do this in more detail. So it's kind of like this. Watch. This is not from photosynthesis. This is from mitochondria. But the idea of a system of proteins in the membrane is beautifully displayed over here. So these little proteins inside the membrane, they're shuttle electrons. See, they're shuttling electrons. So that's the kind of concept I want to just convey, that the shuttling of electrons that occurs in a process that's depicted here. And this is ATP synthase over here that's going to make ATP. So this process is a similar process to what we were talking about. I kind of wanted to convey the idea of how electrons are shuttled between these proteins, okay? Now, again, light strikes in photosystem II, and the electron goes over here and transferred here to create all of this hydrogen ion gradient. Eventually, NADPH is made. Now, inside here also, there is this ATP synthase, which uses the gradient to make ATP. Now, the ATP and NADPH that's produced, as you see, they're produced on the outside, so to speak, right? Outside of the thylakoid, and that can go then to the Calvin cycle to make sugars over here. Okay, that's part 2 of photosynthesis. Okay, so that's the general overview. Now, we're going to do the same thing. By the time we're done with this, hopefully you'll be reasonably comfortable with this. So photon strikes this electron, okay, and it's going to become a high energy electron. So look, right? So when that becomes a high energy electron, it goes over here, okay. Whoa, it's going to travel like a hot potato over here, and it's going to go over here. Now, when the electron leaves the atom here, so electron came from some atom over here, right? In the chlorophyll molecule that trapped the energy, right? So when the electron leaves, if this light keeps striking, all the electrons are going to come down here. That electron is going to be what? Like deficient. That atom is going to be deficient in electrons, right? So those electrons have to be replaced, right? Otherwise it'd be like a naked atom or something like that, right? So you have to replace those electrons. Now mind you, you took a low energy electron and you converted it into a high energy electron, right? So you took a low energy electron and you converted it into a high energy electron. So the electron that you have to replace has to be a low energy one, right? It doesn't have to be a fancy schmancy high energy electron. It has to be a low energy electron. So somebody has to be charitable and give their electrons over here. Otherwise the whole system will crash because you have no more electrons for the photon to strike, correct? So these electrons have to be replaced. So those electrons are replaced by water molecule. If you recall photosynthesis, the first part, okay, takes water molecules, right, and then it produces oxygen from it. Okay, light plus water molecule makes oxygen. Okay, remember in the first part of photosynthesis, and right. So water molecules do that. So the electron then do their thing, they travel across. Okay, now the water molecule, see, the water comes across, water is everywhere, 70% of water, right? So water molecule divide into, right, into oxygen and hydrogen, okay? And the hydrogen ion atoms, they give up their electrons to go back over here. So water, H2O, okay, will divide into the 2 hydrogen ions, okay, and 1 oxygen atom, right, like this, right, to produce that. Now, if you do this reaction 2 times, you do like H2O 2 times, like this, correct? Then these 2 oxygen molecules atoms can combine. Atoms can combine to give an oxygen molecule. So oxygen is produced, okay? So oxygen is produced like that. So the byproduct of this part of the reaction is oxygen, okay? So water is the first molecule that generates oxygen. This reminds me of ion number 30 in cerumbia. If you want to look that up, ion number 30 cerumbia. So it's the first thing, in fact, the first molecule that starts the whole process over here. Now, so photon makes this high energy electron. Those electrons are replaced by a water molecule, and this electron is going to travel across like a hot potato. So this is what happens. Look, light energy going to photosystem II, and the water molecules is replacing, right, the electrons. Oxygen just diffuses out. Oxygen doesn't need anybody's permission to leave. Okay, it just diffuses out. Okay, it's a small molecule. It can go anywhere, thankfully. Diffuses out, and as a process of as the water breaking down, look how much hydrogen ions it's creating. It's creating lots and lots of hydrogen ions just from the breakdown of water. Okay, in addition to that, as the electrons are moving between these proteins in the membrane, they're driving more hydrogen ions on this side. So not only are you generating this hydrogen ions from breaking down the water, you're generating as the high energy electron kind of travels through this cascade of proteins over here, proteins in the membrane. Okay, they're given some very fancy names. These protein molecules. I'm trying to keep this reasonably on a simpler level for us for now. So you're generating hydrogen ion concentration by breaking down water and by dragging all these hydrogen ions as the electron is moving. Okay, and then when it comes over here, recall light strikes the photosystem I again, and those electrons get energized again. And look at this NADPH coming over here, and an electron going in there to make the NADPH. And this is the ATP synthase, which uses the hydrogen ion gradient to make ATP. Okay. So back to our story. So electrons go across, giving you hydrogen across over here. And light strikes again over there. Electron gets energized, right? And those electrons are finally taken up, watch this, by NADPH at NADP plus to give you NADPH. So the final electron accepted here is the NADP plus one hydrogen ion, because they're floating around everywhere, to give you this high energy compound NADPH. So that's what happens over there. Now look at this key statement here. Electron transport chain. Look at this key statement over here. Electron transport chain. This is called the electron transport chain. I should mention that. Electron transport chain provides energy for the synthesis of ATP. And this process of generating energy from a chemical process like this is called chemiosmosis. Chemiosmosis, okay? This process of generating ATP using this chemical energy like this. So now you have generated all the hydrogen ion gradient here. Now this hydrogen ion gradient drives this protein. This protein is ATP synthase. It's possibly one of the most famous proteins here, ATP synthase, okay? The ATP synthase takes the precursor molecules adenosine diphosphate and the phosphate group and attaches and makes it into ATP. And the hydrogen ion gradient drives this, okay? Now what does that mean? See, this is what ATP synthase does. It brings together the ATP and the phosphate group. ATP and the phosphate group, just like two pieces of Lego pieces, they like to come together, but they need a little help, okay? So sometimes these molecules, they may be energy rich. They may have a lot of energy in there, but they need to be brought together. See, two molecules, okay, for them to come together and make one molecule. Sometimes, let's say two molecules are bumping into each other, okay? If they bump into each other, it doesn't mean that they're going to react. They have to bump into each other with a lot of force, okay? So sometimes they need to bump into each other with some force, for example, okay? And then they will react. So the fact that they bump into each other doesn't mean they're going to react. That's why that's why when you cook, you apply heat, because then the molecules have more energy, more kinetic energy, and when they do bump it with some force. So ATP synthase has two sites, two areas where ADP and the phosphate group can attach, and when they attach, it can go like you described over here in this cartoon picture, and ATP actually is formed. Now, what drives this movement of squeezing them into one is the hydrogen ion gradient. And how does that happen? In a very beautiful, elegant, and simple way. It's as simple as water going down in a water mill. See, in a water mill, water flows through, and there's a wheel. And as the water flows over here, the wheel is turned. That is as simple as it is, because at a microscopic, submicroscopic level, okay, at a microscopic and submicroscopic level, these are like wheels. They are just things. They are things. Hydrogen ions are things. Proteins are things. Electrons are things. So hydrogen ion just going through this make this wheel go turn round and round. So here's the hydrogen ion inside the thylakoid. They're going to go across here, and they're going to turn this axle. They're going to turn this wheel of the ATP synthase. Okay, so here's the ATP synthase with the rotor and the rod, and it basically just makes the rod go round and round and round. Okay, and then that's going to allow for this for ATP synthase to be able to convert ADP into ATP. So here's another depiction of the same, and the ATP is created. Okay, now here's how it happens. So over here, as you can see, the hydrogen ion molecule is going here. It is ADP and ATP is going to attach over here, and they're going to make ADP. This is a very curiously amazing little protein. It's depicted over here. These are the ATP molecules being produced over here. It's quite amazing. So here's a summary of the first process, okay? So chemiosmosis. So this is photosystem 2. Photosystem 1, light strikes over here, energizes the electron, okay? and the electrons are replaced by water. Oxygen is produced and it diffuses out, creates hydrogen ions, and then the electron travels across this electron transport chain. Electron travels across the electron transport chain, bringing in more hydrogen ions inside the thylakoid membrane, which generates this tremendous hydrogen ion gradient. The electron is finally accepted after another beam of photon strikes photosystem I, and is taken up by NADP to produce NADPH. And this hydrogen ion gradient is used by ATP synthase to produce ATP. So that is how ATP and NADPH are produced in the light reactions. These are of course light reactions because, as you can see, light is necessary for this to occur in chemosmosis. And that is part 1. After a brief pause, inshallah, we should talk about part 2, where that energy that's generated in ATP and NADPH can be stored to make sugar molecules. Until then, assalamu alaikum.